Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for August 23rd, 2025. Today we're going to start off in Salt Lake City, Utah, where the Lake Plaza Hotel, which has stood a half century in the middle of downtown Salt Lake City, will be closed and demolished according to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints real estate business. The high-rise hotel at 122 West South Temple, one of downtown's more economic lodging options, will be torn down, church-owned property reserve announced in a release Tuesday. The demolition will include the long-closed JB's restaurant on the corner of West Temple and South Temple. Why are they doing this? The site will be used for parking to support the open house for the reopening of the Salt Lake Temple in April of 2027. As a reminder, Russell Nelson announced the following on February 14th of this year. On February 14th, 1853, a groundbreaking ceremony in Salt Lake City began a 40-year journey of faith and sacrifice, culminating in the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple in 1893. A current and comprehensive renovation to strengthen this sacred house of the Lord for future generations is now nearing completion. Today, exactly 172 years after the groundbreaking ceremony, I am delighted to announce that the temple will reopen for tours during a public open house from April 2027 to October 2027. We warmly invite our friends to come and learn about God's plan for His children and rejoice in the love of Jesus Christ. Details about this event will be shared as April 2027 approaches. As houses of the Lord now dot the earth, I invite you to cherish your time and service at the temples closest to you as we prepare for the reopening of the Salt Lake Temple in 2027. According to the hotel's website, the 13-floor building boasts 150 rooms. The building, which opened in 1973, sits between Abravanel Hall and the Family Search Library, formerly the Family History Museum. The hotel is being demolished, the release said, because of the rising cost to maintain, operate, and update its aging structure. November 1st is the last day guests will be permitted to stay at the hotel, the release said. In preparation for closure in November, Property Reserve will be providing financial and job-searching support to hotel employees to help them transition to new jobs, the release said. Property Reserve did not say how many employees are working at the hotel. After its demolition, the release noted there will be 7,421 remaining hotel rooms within a mile of downtown Salt Lake City. The landscaping for the parking area will complement nearby Temple Square and the Family Search Library, the release said. Plans for the space after the 2027 open house are still to be determined. There may be a slight snag, though. BuildingSaltLake.com says, when an investment arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced plans to demolish its Plaza Hotel and shuttered JB's restaurant and build a temporary parking lot in their place near Temple Square, it overlooked one potential problem. City code may not allow that kind of move. According to an ordinance that was updated in recent weeks, Salt Lake City will not permit surface parking lots in the downtown area if they aren't associated with a building on the property. The apparent snag seems to have caught both city leaders and officials from the church off guard and sets up a potential conflict between a city working to beef up its policies around urban design and the most influential landowner in downtown. While detailed plans are scarce, Property Reserve didn't expand on questions around the planned designs for the future lot. At the very least, the ordinance poses several questions around legality. Parking lots for government buildings that are necessary for public health and safety are exempt from these rules, though that likely wouldn't apply to the church. And here's another hang-up. A new line in the parking zone caps surface parking lots in the downtown zones at 40 stalls. The hotel already has a multi-level parking structure with a capacity for more than 40 parking stalls. Parking is also not scarce in the area. Not only does Property Reserve own the hotel and parking structure, the real estate company also owns the lot directly to the west, a nearly 10-acre lot and entire city block that's dedicated to surface parking, and nearly a third of downtown Salt Lake City is already covered in car parking. Sophia Jeremias, a spokesperson for the city's Department of Communities and Neighborhoods, said in an email email Wednesday that the planning division was not aware of the plans ahead of the Tuesday announcement, nor has the city received a proposal from Property Reserve regarding the parking lot plan. Because the planning division has not yet reviewed the plans, it cannot determine if something would be permitted under the current code, Jeremiah said. When reached Wednesday, Dale Bills, a spokesperson for Property Reserve, issued a statement regarding the disparities between the hotel site plans and city code. As we prepare to transfer the property to the church following closure of the hotel, Property Reserve will be collaborating with church facilities managers to review plans for the site with the Salt Lake City Planning Department to obtain required approvals, Bills said in the statement. It's not clear if Property Reserve is aware of the new rules or if it intends on fulfilling downtown parking requirements and abiding by the 40-stall rule. The church may have a strategy for a workaround, but it may not be an easy fix. One option would be to seek a change in zoning to urban institutional, which currently covers Temple Square and other LDS church buildings, like the church's conference center. The UI zone parking rules exemption survived the recent downtown parking changes. In other words, the only way for the parking lot plan to comply with city code would be to either obtain a zoning change from the city or for the LDS church to request a significant variance to parking rules. They request variances to code all the time for their temples. I wonder if they think it will also fly for a parking garage. Now let's go to the church newsroom where it says, at a devotional during Brigham Young University's annual Education Week, Elder Garrit W. Gong taught that the wisdom and understanding of God put artificial intelligence in a gospel context and point us to seek the universal blessings of the atonement of Jesus Christ. Wow, that's a mouthful. Let's see if we can figure out what he's trying to say. Speaking to an audience in the Marriott Center on Tuesday, August 19, 2025, the apostle shared key takeaways from his study of wisdom and understanding in the scriptures. Wisdom and understanding are characteristics of God. We must be careful to not confuse man's wisdom or understanding with that of the Lord. If he only would tell us how to do that, even the prophets have not seemed to figure it out. Back to the article. God can bless us with wisdom and understanding. Scripture teaches us to seek God's wisdom and understanding by trusting God and asking for it. When we receive wisdom and understanding from God, we can begin to see as He does, things we would otherwise not understand. Here's my question, but how can a person know that it's from God? The real answer is that they can't, so just do what the prophet says and you'll be blessed, right? The article then says, putting current conversations about AI in a gospel context, Elder Gong repeated thoughts he shared at a conference in Istanbul on July 29, 2025. Okay, the more I read about the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12, the more I realize how often they recycle their talks. I'm starting to wonder if they give the same prayer, with maybe just a few variations, at temple dedications too, but I haven't looked into it yet. Back to the article. Artificial intelligence is not God and cannot be God, the apostles said. Are there people who think that AI is God? Interesting comment from Gong. The article then says, we can consciously choose and intentionally use AI as a tool for good, and we can invite leaders and citizens across industry, research, civic and government bodies, and faith leaders to align rapid AI developments and enduring faith-based principles and moral values. What's more, Elder Gong said, artificial intelligence cannot replace revelation or generate truth from God. Two things. First, I wonder if he has heard about LDS Bot, the bot that gives apologetic answers to questions about Mormonism. And second, I would love it if he would point out exactly which things in the church today are revelation from God. A list would be amazing. He then says, as church members, we will not grow spiritually if we let artificial intelligence write our sacrament meeting talks or do our seminary homework. AI cannot replace our individual effort and spiritual preparation as we prepare lessons, prayers, or blessings. I have heard this quite consistently from Mormon leaders over the past year. There must be a lot of people outsourcing their talks to AI. Good for them. This last part of his speech, though, is the part I found the most interesting. Elder Gong's final point was about the wisdom and understanding found in the atonement of Jesus Christ. No matter what else you hear today, I hope you will hear that in His time and way, every glorious blessing in the restored gospel of Jesus Christ is meant personally for you, Elder Gong said. Heavenly Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, see, know, and love you. They know everything about you and love you all the more. For those who worry about decisions they made in their past, Elder Gong reminded them of the miraculous cleansing effect of the atonement of Jesus Christ. And here's where it gets really interesting. There may be a spiritual distinction between our lived past and our living past. Our lived past encompasses the lived facts of our intents, decisions, and actions. Our living past reflects the possibility of redemptive changes to our past. Please remember, Jesus Christ and His atonement can cleanse, sanctify, and transform the effects of our intents, decisions, and actions. In essence, He just said that the atonement can change the past. Imagine a child who is a victim of abuse by a religious leader. The abuse was a lived fact of their past, leaving them with trauma, anxiety, and a deep mistrust of authority. Now imagine the perpetrator goes to a church leader and claims to have repented, promising to change. They are told that the atonement has cleansed, sanctified, and transformed the effects of their actions. The perpetrator, believing their living past is now redeemed, approaches the victim and expects immediate forgiveness and a restored relationship without offering an apology, making amends, or seeking professional help. Mr. Gong, please do not tell people that the atonement changes their living past. By focusing on the redemptive changes to our past, perpetrators can avoid confronting the full weight of the harm they have caused. Redemptive changes to the past allows them to shift their focus from the pain they inflicted to their own spiritual salvation. The "I'm good now" mentality means they do not have to truly understand the lasting effects of their actions on others. This also gaslights the victim and minimizes their trauma. The victim is told that the effects of the abuse have been transformed by the atonement. When they continue to feel pain, fear, or anger, they may be told that their feelings are a sign of a lack of faith or an unwillingness to forgive. This places the burden of healing on the victim, implying their continued suffering is their own fault and completely invalidating their lived experience. Focusing on the redemptive changes of the past minimizes the victim's trauma. The lived facts of the abuse, the pain, the fear, the betrayal are treated as something that can be erased or spiritually transcended. This ignores the very real psychological and emotional work a person must do to heal from trauma. Your past is not living in this way, my friends. If you want to make amends for something you have done, telling an untrained lay Mormon bishop and then moving on with your life is not the right way to do it. Now let's go to a screenshot of a post that appeared on my social media lately. It says, "Sometimes as a European, you play an American game, and even though you speak fluent English and culturally there's not too much different, you can tell you're missing some kind of cultural context. I had no effing clue what a Mormon was when I played the new Vegas DLCs." This same person then said, "This post is not an invitation for you all to explain Mormonism to me. I am fine not knowing about this." To which someone responded, "I can't put this in tags like a normal person because apparently Tumblr no longer lets you do long tags, which is dumb and I hate it, but okay. Long time ago, when I was but a wee 14 years old kid living in a sleepy town in northern Ukraine, one day my bestie told me, 'Hey, have you heard about this new English speaking club at the city library? They say it's run by two guys that came here on a mission all the way from America.' And I was like, 'What mission?' And she told me they were supposed to be Mormons. I didn't believe her. I was convinced she was effing with me because at the time I didn't think that Mormons were real. I honestly thought they were fictional and only existed as a gag in South Park. And then a couple of days later, those two missionaries actually showed up to our English class to promote their little conversion club. Those poor men stood in front of a bunch of 14 years old and told us they were Mormon, and several of my classmates said, 'Wait, Mormon? Like in South Park?' And from their pained expressions, you could clearly tell that it wasn't the first time they had been asked that here. I love getting a glimpse into outside perspectives. And if you haven't seen the episode of South Park about the Mormons, I would suggest giving it a watch. It will likely tell you more truth about church history than you ever learned at church. When looking into the church in Ukraine because of this post, I happened upon this Reddit post in the LDS subreddit that says, "Sister got her mission call. Mom is not excited about it." Okay, so my youngest sister just opened her mission call yesterday to be greeted with Kiev, Ukraine mission, but serving in Moldova speaking Russian. My mom is absolutely less than stoked about it with the troubles east of that area, and besides the normal reassurance that the Lord doesn't place his missionaries in harm's way, what other things can I talk to her about to allay her fears about her youngest child going to Eastern Europe? Any comments from recently returned folks would be much appreciated. Edit. I would just like to reiterate the fact that it specifically says in her call that she will be serving in Moldova. I'm assuming it just falls under the Ukraine mission. We know they aren't putting missionaries in Ukraine at the moment. Also, edit. We are all super active members, so it's not like my mom is going to tell her not to go, haha. I personally am not terribly worried about it. I have a lot better understanding of the geopolitical situation over there. It's going to be such a great eye-opening experience for her. And one of the commenters said this: "The church doesn't endanger its missionaries. She will be safe. They are very careful about missionary safety. I served in the Bulgaria-Turkey mission, and they evacuated every missionary within 24 hours from Turkey when the Turkish government published an indictment against the mission president. The church didn't do anything wrong. The Turkish dictator Erdogan is corrupt and was targeting Christian organizations in the country. Both my brother and I served in the Eastern European area, and safety is constantly on the area authorities' minds. I promise their safety is the top concern of the church, and they wouldn't send them to Moldova if it was a danger." Although this is a common belief among active Mormons, this comment is misleading because it uses a single anecdote and personal testimony to make a sweeping, universal claim about missionary safety. It's a classic example of flawed reasoning that ignores the complexities and risks of missionary work. The commenter uses a specific, positive experience to support the broad claim that the church is always successful at protecting its missionaries. This is a logical fallacy known as generalizing from a single anecdote. One successful evacuation doesn't prove that all missionaries in all circumstances are safe or that the church's system is infallible. The statement also relies on personal testimony and an appeal to a perceived authority to convince the reader. This is not objective, verifiable evidence. The speaker is asking the reader to trust their personal assurance rather than a transparent, documented safety record. But guess what? They kind of have to, because the church does not publish safety stats about its missionaries. Last year alone, I counted 9 that died on the mission, and those are just the ones that made headlines. The other thing that I found interesting about this post in general is something I hadn't really thought about much until now. But when LDS teens are issued mission calls, they and their families aren't given the option of, "This area of the world won't work for me right now. Please give me another choice." I have seen mission calls be changed for medical reasons, but do people get their calls changed because they just don't want to go to a certain place? Thinking of that led me to this post by very Orthodox member Jeremy Goff that explains why missionaries may not question their mission call. He says Latter-day Saints have been repeatedly taught to never turn down a call to serve. The prophets have been clear on this matter. I cite just 3 apostolic witnesses to establish this truth. Just as service in the church is not sought, it is not turned down. Dallin Oaks. Let us be honest with ourselves and never turn down an opportunity to serve in building and serving the kingdom of God. Franklin Richards. It is not in the proper spirit for us to decide where we will serve or where we will not. We serve where we are called. It does not matter what the calling may be. Boyd Packer. Despite the words of the prophets being clear that Latter-day Saints do not turn down callings, there is a growing trend within the church of rejecting callings. I believe this alarming rise in rejected callings stems from the philosophies of men mingled with scripture as taught by social media influencers, including therapists in the church. Wow, Jeremy never turned down a calling? His statement presents an absolute, without any consideration for personal circumstances. It dismisses real-world issues like mental health crises, physical exhaustion, caregiving responsibilities, or severe burnout. By implying that any reason for rejecting a calling stems from the philosophies of men, Jeremy shames members who are making responsible choices for their own well-being and promotes an obedience above all mentality that is deeply harmful. He avoids a nuanced discussion about why members might be rejecting callings and instead blames social media influencers, including therapists. This is a form of scapegoating. The trend is more likely a symptom of internal issues in the Mormon Church, such as the immense time demands placed on members, a lack of transparency in the calling process, or a growing awareness of the importance of self-care. Jeremy is also promoting a culture where a member's worth is tied to their unquestioning obedience, teaching members to ignore their own intuition and personal revelation in favor of an institutional command. He throws personal agency out the window, creating a fear-based system of control rather than one of love and service. He goes on to say, I want to deconstruct the main 4 reasons people give for turning down callings. First, it is a matter of agency. Satan lost the war to take away our agency. Now he obsesses on getting us to misuse it. It is true, we have our agency and we can reject callings, but using our agency to reject callings causes us to break our temple covenants. When each member of the church goes to the temple and receives their endowment, they use their agency to covenant to consecrate everything up to and including their very lives to build the kingdom. When a calling is extended to us, it is the Lord asking us, will you keep your covenants? Here, Jeremy presents agency as a choice between 2 outcomes, using it correctly to accept a calling or misusing it to reject one. This is a flawed argument. True agency is the freedom to choose, and a choice is not a misuse just because it goes against an institutional preference. By framing one choice as a spiritual failure, he invalidates a person's ability to make a valid, justified decision for their own well-being. He goes on to say, second, the call would inconvenience me or my family. Inconvenience is one of the biggest reasons people give for turning down a calling. Being too busy with work or school sounds like a valid reason to turn down a calling. Many influencers, and especially therapists, claim that this excuse is justified. When Robert C. Gay was called to be a mission president by an apostle, he had bought into this excuse. The result, he declined the call. The apostle extending the call did not miss a beat and replied, you really don't get it. You are either going to live your life by covenant or convenience. There is never a convenient time to serve. Here, he sets up a black and white choice between living by covenant, good, and living by convenience, bad. In reality, the reasons people give for turning down a calling are often not about convenience, but about sustainability. A person might be dealing with a full-time job, a sick family member, or a mental health crisis. Framing these legitimate and often serious concerns as mere inconvenience is a form of gaslighting that dismisses a person's lived reality and is emotionally manipulative. He then says, third, I have medical/mental health problems. There are many severe medical and mental health problems that would appear to excuse us from service. Even Enoch and Moses felt this way. Both of them suffered from being slow of speech, or in other words, they had dysarthria, where they stammered and slurred their words. Others suffer from a whole host of various medical or mental health problems, but the Lord's reply to Moses applies to all of us. And the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth, or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Jeremy Goff is so dismissive of genuine medical and mental health problems as mere obstacles that can be overcome through spiritual willpower. This is a harmful message that ignores the reality of chronic illness, clinical depression, anxiety disorders, and other conditions that can make service physically or emotionally impossible. His magical thinking can lead individuals to push themselves beyond their limits, which often results in severe burnout and a worsening of their health. I remember thinking things like this, though. If I just move forward in faith, the Lord will make up for the difference. He never did. Jeremy Goff also uses the story of Moses in a misleading way. While Moses did feel inadequate due to his speech impediment, the Lord did not simply tell him to overcome it on his own. In a key part of the story, the author conveniently leaves out the Lord provided a specific, tangible accommodation by sending Aaron to be Moses' spokesperson. Jeremy Goff's use of a single verse to make a sweeping universal claim while ignoring the rest of the narrative is theologically dishonest and manipulative. Again, with the manipulation. Jeremy Goff's number 4 is, it was a calling of desperation, not revelation. The idea that a bishop has extended a calling due to desperation and not revelation is unfortunately not uncommon. I've seen dozens and dozens of comments online reiterating this idea, and I have even had family and friends suggest it. On the note of desperation, there is no clause on the temple covenant that says you only need to keep this covenant to build up the kingdom if your bishop is not desperate. Now, with that being said, it is the duty of the bishop to pray and get confirmation about a calling before it is extended. There is nothing wrong with asking the Lord for confirmation if you are really struggling with a call, but often you receive no witness until after the trial of your faith. Therefore, it is vital that we understand and presume that our leaders are acting on inspiration. Dallin Oaks taught this: we respect our leaders and presume inspiration in their leadership of the church and in their teaching. But we are all privileged and encouraged to confirm their teachings by prayerfully seeking and receiving revelatory confirmation directly from God. Note, if a calling is extended properly, it will be framed that it is not the bishop requesting, but after study and prayer, it has been confirmed that it is the Lord extending the call through his servant. That was a lot. A member's gut feeling or spiritual prompting that a calling is not right for them can be a form of personal revelation, but Jeremy Goff is teaching members to ignore their internal witness and instead defer to a leader's authority. He also uses the concept of a trial of your faith to justify a lack of immediate spiritual confirmation. This is a form of spiritual gaslighting. If a member feels a negative prompting, they could be told that this is the very trial they must endure to prove their faith. This removes the possibility of a no and makes a member's own spiritual discernment irrelevant in the face of an institutional request. And to top it off, Jeremy Goff's final note that a calling is from God, not the bishop, reinforces his manipulation by making it incredibly difficult to reject the calling without feeling one is rejecting God. Since I stopped attending church in 2018, I have continually been working on my ability to say no thank you when something doesn't work for me. It's a work in progress, for sure, after years of being taught that saying no often meant offending God. And on that note, let's finish with one of my favorite quotes about boundaries that says, "No is a complete sentence." And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.